Strategy Forum. It's an excellent topic. I think you're going to really enjoy this. We have a tremendous speaker here to enlighten us this morning about the research and development enterprise. Before I get into introducing Steve, though, let me just start off with our obligatory security announcement. This CSIS is a very safe facility, and these issues have all been thought through. I just want to alert you to the fact that if there were some disturbance or some reason why we needed to leave this room, I will be your security officer. I will give you some guidance on what to do. We have two routes out, one through the front where you came in, the other through the back if that were a better way to go, and two rally points, the church down the road and the National Geographic behind us if we were to need to do that, but in all likelihood we won't. And I want to thank you for joining us. As I mentioned, this is part of our Military Strategy Forum series, which is an ongoing series. Today's event, however, is supported by general funds that are for the support of CSIS, not by a specific sponsor. And joining us this morning to, as I said, enlighten and entertain us is Mr. Stephen P. Welby, Steve to those of us who know him, who is the Assistant Secretary of Defense for Research and Engineering at the Department of Defense and has served in that capacity since December 14th of 2015. And as part of that position, he is the Chief Technology Officer for the Department of Defense, which may be one of the coolest titles that I know of. No envy at all. As ASD-R&E, Mr. Welby is responsible for the department's strategic and supporting plans to develop and leverage the technologies needed to ensure continued U.S. technological superiority, which I would point out is one of the main priorities for not only the organization, acquisition, technology, and logistics that R&E is part of, but for the broader Department of Defense. Prior to serving in his current duties, Steve was a Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for Systems Engineering, a role that he filled very capably for a number of years, really got that organization up and running as a functioning enterprise, as it had somewhat gone into a smaller status, let me put it that way, prior to the passage of WSARA, and Steve has really tackled that position and made it a highly functioning organization. He's also served as the Defense Standardization Executive in that role. He has more than 28 years of government and industry experience, including senior positions at DARPA. So he's really seen the R&E enterprise across all its many foundations. And with that, I will turn the floor over to Steve.
Well, Andrew, thank you for the kind introduction, and I'd also like to thank the Center for hosting this morning's event. I'd like to take the opportunity this morning to share some thoughts about the work that's going on across the broader defense enterprise, focused on delivering disruptive advantage to U.S. forces, creating technical options for future materiel decisions, and the work that goes on every day to preserve the technological superiority of U.S. capabilities. This morning's event is part of, as Andrew mentioned, the CSIS Military Strategy Forum. And so I'd like to start with a few words about the role that technology plays in informing and influencing strategic choices. Today, the United States is the greatest military force that the world has ever known, and we're engaged worldwide in ongoing operations of protecting our nation, defending our allies and partners, and providing assistance and relief to those in need. Our strength and ability to project power is based on two key pillars: the remarkable military professionals that make up our all-volunteer force, and the tools they deploy with that provide them with overmatch against any potential adversary. Over the last 40 years, the United States has enjoyed a measure of technological sophistication that's been really unmatched by any potential competitor. The mix of precision weapons that offered near-zero miss distance, the long-range ISR for precision targeting, the stealth capabilities that the stations deployed, and the networks and planning systems that have allowed us to connect all those together really have provided enormous value in the framework that supports our conventional deterrence, that permits global power projection, and that really provides our nation with an enormous technological advantage in national security space. These tools arose from what we now talk about in the department as the second offset strategy, a coordinated pattern of investments that were focused on originally providing a conventional response to Soviet armored numerical superiority in Europe. These technical capabilities themselves emerged from DARPA programs that were executed in programs that came out of our military laboratories, all executed back in the 70s. A series of operational experimentation and demonstration programs that were conducted in the early 80s, and procurement efforts that ran into the mid-80s and beyond. These technical innovations were coupled with organizational and operational innovations, and they really allowed us to deploy these capabilities in new ways to project power in ways that we never had been able to before. This complete set of tools was never deployed in anger against the Soviet Union, but certainly they did influence the balance of deterrence during that period, and we have used those capabilities to great advantage in every conflict that the United States has been involved in since. So what's changed? First, the 40-year run of success we've had with these kind of second offset technologies is kind of a historically unheard of period for a technology to be possessed by kind of a sole actor on the global stage. It's an enormous period of time to maintain technological advantage in military competition. Over that 40-year period, potential competitors have studied the United States' advanced capabilities, and particularly over the last decade, they've begun to make significant investments in modernized tools that really are intended to blunt those particular advantages and advances that the United States has been able to bring to bear. The investments that I'm most concerned about are those that are focused on directly blunting the U.S. ability to project power. And they've been aided by the changes that have happened in the world over the last few decades. The global technological diffusion of advanced capabilities, the globalization of our technology supply chain, and particularly the globalization of high-quality technical talent that's occurred over the last few years. And also by the convergence of capabilities in the military and commercial domains. The capabilities of the second offset, the things that enabled precision weapons, for example, were enabled by the convergence of a set of technologies. Unique military technologies, things that were developed in our labs like miniature inertial navigation sensors, satellite positioning and timing systems, monolithic integrated microwave integrated RF technology, advanced computing, and advanced digital sensors. And I bet that mix of technologies is in everybody's pocket in the room now, right? That suite of capabilities, which was once the core of precision weaponeering, is now embedded in everybody's cell phone. The dispersion of these kind of capabilities have enabled states with regional ambitions to apply these technologies of the second offset to a new purpose, to impose potential costs on the United States' ability to project power. These tools are realized as sophisticated long-range precision anti-ship, anti-surface, and anti-air capabilities. They're realized as increasingly sophisticated electronic warfare and cyber capabilities, and they're realized by the emergence of much more sophisticated manned and unmanned air, undersea, and surface weapon systems. There's been a lot of discussion across the department and in the press and at CSIS and academia on this notion of an anti-access aerial denial challenge, the threat imposed by sophisticated air defense systems, of the challenge of defending critical bases and naval groups against large salvos of ballistic and cruise missiles, and of the evolution of lethality in ground combat and how that might shape future ground combat efforts. All of those being driven by this emergence of precision long-range weapons in the hands of other states. And it really represents, to some extent, a growing symmetry in technical capabilities between the United States and with, nations with regional ambitions that might have reason to challenge U.S. power projection capabilities. And many of those nations now have sufficient available GDP to be able to invest in these kind of military capabilities. The challenge that this mix of capabilities brings is why the department's now talking about notions of a third offset strategy. We need to make sure that U.S. forces continue to maintain a decisive technological overmatch. We're motivated to explore new opportunities to sidestep these kind of emerging challenges and to ensure that we can ensure and protect U.S. advantage into the future. And I think that's really the core of what we deliver out of our nation's military S&T enterprise. The notion of a third offset strategy is not, there is no third offset strategy document that's sitting in a drawer in a desk in my office or in a safe in Deputy Secretary Work's office. It's really an ambitional idea. It's an attempt to kind of focus and drive the thinking that's going on across the department around the broad nature of the capabilities we need to realize by pursuing development, experimentation, and ultimately deployment of advanced capabilities, of advanced concepts that will allow us to maintain advantage in the future. And in lots of other forums, folks have talked about some of the things that we're pursuing, the notion of leveraging advanced computer systems, artificial intelligence, and autonomy to provide new capabilities, the need to leverage advances in electronic warfare and cyber technology and long-range systems, and putting those together in new and unique ways to rethink what the future of power projection might look like. The landscape on which the S&T community works has evolved as well over the last few decades. And I expect that change will accelerate as well over the next few decades. While many of the technologies that we rely on in the future, I believe, will remain defense unique, increasingly some of our most cutting-edge capabilities will reflect a convergence of military and commercial technologies. The department's going to need to change and shape the way that we develop our advanced science and technology to engage with new and emergent military and commercial technologies. We need to be able to stay aware of and shape technology and business relationships, both within and outside of our traditional defense industrial base. We're increasingly going to need to be open to collaborations of all kinds with domestic and global partners, with traditional defense industry, and with companies outside of the usual suspects, entrepreneurial small firms, mid-size enterprises, and increasingly with academic institutions. In the national security environment characterized by increasing technical competition, the United States is going to need to respond by upping our tempo, by increasing our ability to identify and exploit new technologies, to create technology offsets, to find opportunities to leverage innovative capabilities to shape technology competition in our favor. It's a great strength of the United States. It's one of our core national capabilities. I think it's a great opportunity for us to rethink the future. But in a competitive environment, first mover advantage is going to matter. We want to be able to get there first. We want to be able to shape the conditions for a technological competition. We want to be the first to recognize, shape, and leverage disruptive opportunities. We're going to want to out-innovate potential competitors, turning our innovation OODA loop, if you will, faster than they can, and while preserving and advancing the unfair advantage that technology superiority offers U.S. forces. And I think that's the core challenge as we think about the future of our science and technology enterprise, of our laboratories, of our institutions, of our engagements. How do we up that pace of recognition and engagement on the frontiers of innovation? Upping our game in identifying, leveraging, and exploiting innovative, disruptive technologies, I think, is really the burning platform for the department. It's an imperative that's going to change the way that we operate on the S&T side. It's going to drive us to be much more open to new technologies and to disruptive capabilities. It's going to force a posture of increased collaboration on the department, and it's going to push us increasingly to execute transitions from concept to field at a much faster pace. And that's all going to help, I think, shape the future of our S&T community to help drive that pace of innovation in ways that will yield long-term military advantage. Secretary Carter's been an enormous supporter and advocate of opening the department to new sources of ideas and opportunities, and he often talks about punching holes in the five-sided box in which we work. And so as a way to talk about and kind of symbolize the receptivity of the department to new ideas, to new partners, and to new talent, all of which can help us embrace cultural change, drive creative, innovative thinking, and help us explore new technical opportunities. Just yesterday, Dr. Carter visited Austin, Texas, where he announced the third operating location of our Defense Innovation Unit Experimental, our DIUX. DIUX Austin joins our Silicon Valley and Cambridge, Massachusetts operating locations and provides a point of presence from which the department can reach out to engage fast-moving technology firms that are really driving the frontiers of innovative and creative technology. These are firms that are typically moving at such a breakneck pace to find and shape new commercial markets that they often don't think about the ability to engage with a national security market. And through DIUX, Raj Shah and his team at DIUX are working hard working with founders and with startups to help them come to recognize the advantage that engaging the department can offer, both to help accelerate the growth of these firms and at the same time to bring a new source of capability to the warfighter. But while efforts like DIUX are scouting for disruptive technology among organizations that have not previously engaged with the department or focused on national security, I continue to believe that the core technical engine of the department will remain our DoD S&T community, the men and women, uniformed and civilian, who are every day exploring new scientific frontiers, advancing military capabilities, advancing critical military technologies, and envisioning entirely new military concepts. These scientists and engineers devote themselves to public service in support of our national security mission every day in the department's laboratories, in our research and development centers, and on our test ranges. They're engaged in deep and active technical collaboration with technical experts in academia, in industry, and with our research partners globally in partner nations. And I don't think we spend enough time focused on that core engine of technology innovation that's made up of the service and defense laboratories and agencies. If I could get the first chart. I wanted to just take a moment, and probably the font on this chart is too small, but the message is just the distribution of S&T activities across the country. We have three principal service laboratories: the Army Research Laboratory, headquartered in Delphi, Maryland, the Navy Research Laboratory here in D.C., and the Air Force Research Laboratory, headquartered in Dayton, Ohio. In addition to those three principal operating locations, those three headquarters elements, the department operates 63 additional research and engineering centers across the country, each specialized in key technology and key military areas. And they include organizations like the Air Force's rocket research facilities out at Edwards Air Force Base, the Navy's capabilities out at China Lake in the desert, our medical research centers in San Antonio and Fort Detrick, the Army's aviation and missile capabilities in Huntsville, Alabama, our weapons capabilities down in England, Florida, the Army's vehicle research work up in Warren, Michigan, and our Soldier Systems Center in Natick, Massachusetts, just to name a few, but to give a sense of the span of specialization and the key engagements that each of these centers have with their local academic communities, with their industrial base in those areas, and with those folks who are thinking about advancing those particular niches that the department needs to preserve a core capacity in. The folks who work in these labs have unique world-class capabilities, unique world-class equipment. These labs are home to world-class technical experts who are continuously engaged with their academic and industrial collaborators. And we're engaged with world leaders all around the globe in the specific technical domains in which we work. If I get the next chart, I just wanted to point that out. We often get criticized, perhaps I think incorrectly, for being focused too domestically, but our scientists and engineers are not just engaged here at home. Our science technology community has a global footprint, engaging with researchers deployed across research and academics deployed across Europe, Asia, Australia, and South America. I'll point, of course, to the Army's engagement, the medical researchers we have deployed all across Africa on the front line of the fight against emerging infectious diseases, bringing the expertise of DoD technologists and technology to the fight against disease, and called upon recently to help counter the Ebola epidemic, and today engaged here at home in support of the fight against Zika. Our scientists and engineers are deployed today in theater and worldwide in support of combatant commander needs, bringing technical advice, analysis, and assistance directly to the combatant commanders. The global footprint of our S&T workforce is intended to recognize and take advantage of the increasingly international nature of 21st century science and technology. The department is today and intends to continue to be engaged with the best and brightest researchers worldwide, ensuring that the United States has access to, engagement with, and an understanding of the global state of the art in those relevant technologies to the department's future. Can we get the next chart, please? Thanks. In addition to our laboratories, I also wanted to mention the unique role that DARPA plays in the defense enterprise. For the last 58 years, DARPA has been at the forefront of disruptive revolution after revolution in military and civilian technology. DARPA was responsible or contributed significantly to weather satellites, to the first spaceborne reconnaissance, to early GPS, space and ground receivers, to revolutions in microelectronics, to stealth aircraft, to UAVs, to advances in artificial intelligence, computer vision, to network weapons, advanced robotics, novel materials, autonomous ground vehicles, to the computer mouse that all of us use every day, and of course, to helping to birth the internet. Last month, DARPA held the Cyber Grand Challenge event out in Las Vegas, and I think I saw it during that event, the birth of another revolution. At that event, DARPA demonstrated supercomputers that were capable of examining their own software in real time, identifying zero-day vulnerabilities in their software, and in real time and fully autonomously without any other human intervention, capable of rewriting their software to automatically patch those vulnerabilities that they were detecting. And I think that's an example of the kind of things that DARPA does, engaged in high-risk, high-payoff technology projects that offer an opportunity to fundamentally reshape the technology landscape. This cyber paradigm that we saw at the Cyber Grand Challenge, this notion of self-healing computer systems that are able to protect themselves autonomously, offers a glimpse of a new opportunity to think about cyber defense in a much more affordable way, in a much more reliable way, and in a way that might scale in ways that our current systems can't. DARPA executes its mission, again, focused on high-risk, high-payoff technologies with a project focus. And they have achieved success over time by attracting the best and brightest who want to work on some of the most compelling and fascinating technical problems our country has to offer, and by operating with a very lean and agile operating model. But DARPA exists alongside and fully intertwined with the rest of the DoD laboratory community. The tiny footprint, personnel footprint that DARPA has is only capable of operating by leveraging that larger S&T enterprise. And we're very tightly intertwined in the execution of our programs. I sometimes hear folks suggest that the government cannot move quickly, cannot drive technology innovation, and I point to the success of DARPA and the DoD labs in shaping such an enormous suite of core technologies. In collaboration with industry and academia, they continue to succeed in simultaneously conducting fundamental research, in growing our core technological capabilities, in creating and leveraging disruptive change, and in moving capabilities quickly into the industrial base, into production, and into the hands of our warfighter. Our laboratories and technical centers serve a very vital role in the defense research enterprise in that they provide the critical translational research, the connective tissue between the technology community and the warfighter. Our laboratory researchers are engaged directly with the warfighter. They speak their language, they understand their operational challenges, and they know the context, environments, and networks into which emerging technologies need to be integrated. Our labs provide a bridge between the technical and the operational and serve to sustain specialized S&T expertise, engagement, and insight that resides nowhere else. No one in a garage in Palo Alto is developing the next armor system, the next defensive capability for a carrier, the next acoustic quieting technology for our submarines. There are these suites of pointy edge of the spear technologies that need to be leveraging what's happening in those outside communities, but needs to be translated back to the tools for our unique domain. As Chief Technology Officer for the department, one of my duties is to ensure that our S&T portfolio remains focused on the areas that are that provide the most return on our investment, to ensure that the services and agency investments are deconflicted, to avoid unnecessary duplication, and to help connect the work that's going on across the department to yield synergistic results that are greater than the sum of individual technical investments. To do this efficiently, we've identified 17 what we call Reliance 21 communities of interest. These are the focus areas, the technical focus areas that the department's organized its S&T base around. And we do this in a bottom-up fashion. Each of those 17 communities is led by a technical expert from across the department. Those technical leadership roles rotate among the services, and their staffs are pulled from experts across the department. They come together to do reviews and then go back to their day jobs. We use these communities to perform technical assessments, to develop our classified and unclassified roadmaps for where we're taking our technology investments, and to make recommendations about work that should be accelerated and work that should be wound down. I have the opportunity to review these plans and recommendations several times a year, and I believe that this is an effective way to align our efforts to ensure that we're focused on the cutting edge, to make sure that there's no gaps in our program. Today, about 75% of the total DoD S&T budget is covered by these 17 focus areas. And at the 6.2 and 6.3, at the applied research and advanced technology research pieces, the more applied portions of our S&T portfolios, our science technology portfolios, about 90% of that investment is covered by these 17 communities. Our laboratories remain enormously productive institutions. In 2015 alone, the labs, scientists and engineers in our labs produced over 4,000 peer-reviewed journal articles, filed over 900 patents, and across the services and agencies, we executed over 2,000 cooperative research and development agreements last year, the majority of which were with small and emerging mid-size organizations, companies. These agreements allow us to quickly move technology out of the labs into the hands of those who are developing new products, who are building new businesses around those technologies, and it ensures that we can obtain maximum impact from S&T investments for the taxpayer. If I could get the next chart. I just want to take a moment to talk about the I just want to take a moment quickly to talk about the science and technology budget. In February, the President submitted the fiscal 2017 budget request, which included the science and technology request for the Department of Defense. Of course, today we're now 14 days away from the start of fiscal 2017. Congress is still engaged in deliberations on funding for the department. I'm hoping we get some clarification here over the next 2 weeks about the shape of the activities here for the next quarter. But the President's 2017 budget request for DoD science and technology was $12.5 billion, divided between what we call budget activity 1, 2, and 3, basic research, applied research, and that advanced technology development that turns applied research into kind of the next stage of maturation. The White House, Secretary Carter, and congressional leadership has been very supportive of this S&T request, which preserves the current level of DoD S&T funding with adjustments for inflation at a constant rate into 17 and continues at that constant level across the future year defense plan. The commitment to maintain the science and technology budget demonstrates the understanding that S&T investments are really an investment in future capabilities, and that taking risk in this account can have significant impacts on our ability to deliver future capabilities. The chart also shows the split between the investments we make in each of the service S&T organizations in DARPA. It's kind of an equal split. The work that goes on in defense agencies, and particularly large chunk at the Missile Defense Agency, and then the small piece on the bottom that's executed directly out of my office, which is largely kind of cross-cutting work that goes back to the whole department. I've also included on this chart the historic split between intramural and extramural funding. There's a perception that the majority of these dollars are spent perhaps in the defense laboratories, and well over 2/3 of the funds leave the department in the form of grants and contracts to academia and industry that seed these external engagements and that seed development of capabilities across the country. Next chart. I also want to show the long-term trends, and I'm motivated to do this partly by the CSAS report that was released on Monday, which looked at some models of contracted research activity. Here I'm showing the appropriated funds that Congress has provided in the RDT&E accounts. It's publicly available data. You could make this plot yourself. The chart shows the dollars not only in the 3 S&T accounts, but also budget activities 4, 5, and 7. That is advanced component development, system development, and demonstration, and then finally in BA7, operational system development. That is the work that goes on outside of the S&T space to mature those technologies into components and into capabilities that can be integrated into weapon systems, and in that kind of top bar, the preliminary work that goes on prior to production in terms of developing future military products. On the chart, you can see that the S&T accounts, the 3 bars in the bottom, which are labeled Force After Next, have largely been stable over time, and particularly over the last few years. We've had a very stable commitment from Congress and the administration to support core science and technology across the department. The developmental counts for that next force, that is those capabilities that are harnessing S&T and turning that into military capabilities, you can see the pressure that they've been under over the last few years as we had to make hard choices in the budget. And the real point of this chart is the decline in the 6-7 accounts that have seen significant reductions from their peak out in the 2009-2010 period, reflecting the fact that few new systems today are entering formal development in anticipation of future production. Many of our recent production programs, their development is now completed. They're in procurement. Many of our more recent developmental programs, the production programs, have been non-developmental. They haven't been preceded by research and development, advanced research and development activity. And many of our other investments today in modernization are really focused on life extension or more limited upgrades rather than full system development. And so I think this indicates a potential risk. While this reduction in investment in those more mature categories frees up resources in a really tight budget environment for use elsewhere in the department, we've really started to diminish that higher end of that product pipeline, that emergence of new capabilities that are going to feed procurement. And I think it illustrates an opportunity for the department to rethink and recapitalize that portion of the new product pipeline in the future, and the need to do that if we're going to see the capabilities that are envisioned in the third offset strategy finding their way into production and fielding. Okay, if I get the next chart. One technical strategy that we're pursuing to accelerate maturation of capabilities in a constrained budget environment is an increased focus on prototyping and experimentation. The FY17 budget request also included a number of significant prototyping and demonstration efforts that are intended to mature technologies and demonstrate their core technical capabilities, and to deliver a limited number of representative prototypes to operational users to be exercised in the field and with the fleet. At the end of these prototyping efforts, military users have a much greater understanding of the military utility of future capabilities, understand how technology can be integrated into tactics and force planning, and will also have matured and de-risked the concepts in a way that will allow us to move them much faster into production if that decision is made. Our prototyping efforts are a hedge against an uncertain future. They allow us to avoid early commitment to procurement and fielding, the serial production demand, and they provide options to leadership to help shape future system portfolios. And if I get the next chart, I don't know if this is going to play. I want to just illustrate the kind of role of prototypes with the DARPA Sea Hunter, this ship that you see here. Sea Hunter is a great example. It was christened by Deputy Secretary Work back in April up in Portland. Sea Hunter is a full-scale prototype surface vessel capable of fully autonomous operation. There's nobody on board that ship. Well, there may be a pilot on board the ship in this video, but in operation, there's nobody on board that ship. It's equipped with sensors and processing that enable to operate in a completely unmanned mode, while at the same time fully complying with coal regs, with the collision regulations, and with all the laws of the sea. It's designed to be launched from a pier. It's capable of traversing 10,000 nautical miles at 12 knots without refueling. It's got fully redundant systems, computation, propulsion, safety and life support, safety systems. There's no life to support on this thing. And it was originally designed to be a tracker of potentially stealthy diesel-electric submarines. But today, that ship has left Portland and is now with the fleet in San Diego. And for the next 2 years, the Navy is going to work with that vessel to help understand how unmanned capabilities will intermix with manned capabilities in future systems. To think about new roles. Will I put sensors on it? How will this interact with other ships? Can I use this in a mine clearing role? All these kind of questions that come up Can I use unmanned ships to free up manned ships to do the missions that they're most capable of? Can I avoid having to use a destroyer to do things that something like this might be able to do? I think it's a really interesting opportunity. And while we could have developed all the technologies, DARPA could have developed all the technologies here, on a whaler, in the Chesapeake Bay, we wouldn't have got to the integration, to the real kind of operational challenges, to the system effects that are associated with this, and operators wouldn't have had the ability to interact with this and to think about how this will drive tactics and doctrine. And so many of these prototype programs are about taking that last step, to go from the capabilities we work in the lab in simulation and wargaming, and actually put it into the field so folks can wrap knuckles and understand, on the devices and understand what they can really do for them. Next chart, please. If we're going to out-innovate our adversaries, we also need to be able to be a smarter buyer to accelerate delivery of capabilities. And for the last 6 years, starting with Dr. Carter and when he was Undersecretary of Defense for AT&L, and now continued by Undersecretary Kendall, we've been working to improve and reshape the way the department buys goods and services. Without significant fanfare, these internal initiatives have been driving efficiency and productivity in the DoD acquisition process, improved the department's effectiveness in the tradecraft of acquisition, have cut red tape and bureaucracy, and have encouraged our leaders to better prioritize performance and risk in acquisition decisions while maintaining a laser-like focus on cost. The current iteration of Better Buying Power is Better Buying Power 3.0, and it is particularly focused with an emphasis on preserving technical advantage by promoting innovation and speed of capability delivery. I don't have time this morning to kind of go through all the efforts that are underway under Better Buying Power, but there's an enormous set focused on our laboratories, on global engagement, on openness to industry, and it really is starting to think about how we start to get this framework, this innovation and thinking into our core processes. The rewrite of the core DoD 5000 acquisition instructions that emphasizes alternative acquisition models, that emphasizes speed in the way we do business, that cuts out unproductive processes, I think is a step forward in terms of the way we need to think, and there's a lot more we need to do in this area. One piece that Better Buying Power 3.0 does emphasize, though, is the importance of technical talent, and this is a theme that's been echoed by the Secretary in his Force of the Future initiatives. In a national security environment that places a premium on technical innovation, we're going to need to increase our focus on attracting, recruiting, and retaining the most creative technical talent that we can get our hands on to help shape the department's future. Today, in many technical domains, and particularly in advanced computer science and artificial intelligence, and in some cutting-edge areas in biology, I'm very concerned about our department's ability to compete for the best and brightest researchers and engineers, given the global demand signal, given the price that folks are willing to pay for that talent. Our laboratories have traditionally led the department in developing creative solutions to their personnel challenges, from the flexible authorities that were executed under the lab demo program to the use of the Smart Scholarship for Service program to attract undergraduates to the department. The labs have been in the lead in thinking through novel personnel policies that are now finding their way across the department through the Force of the Future initiative. I think that we're going to have to continue to look at novel personnel policies in the S&T community, increasingly thinking about ways to expand our collaboration with non-government performers, to increase our focus on internal and external entrepreneurship, to think about ways that we can bring people into and out of the department for short tours, to kind of allow people to rethink the way they engage in a career. To compete for talent, we're going to need to focus on the things that bring people to the department in the first place in our S&T world, the unique technical opportunities we offer, the opportunity for collaboration with peers, and the opportunity to contribute to a greater public mission. So just to wrap up, increasingly, I believe future U.S. technological superiority is going to hinge on our ability to out-innovate our adversaries. That's going to require us to rethink how we source technology and perhaps to rethink our models for product delivery. It's going to require leadership that is prepared to focus on time to market, on speed from concept to delivery. And it's going to require a DoD S&T enterprise that is tuned to support both sustained research in fundamental technologies and to rapidly leverage emerging technical opportunities to address warfighter needs. We need to be open and agile to leverage all potential sources of technical advantage from our traditional industrial base, from non-traditional suppliers, and from academia to help create competitive advantage. And our laboratories are going to need to be prepared to perform a key role in translating technical capabilities into solutions and concepts that will help meet our warfighters' needs and grow their capability to overmatch any threat. I believe our S&T enterprise is ready to take on these challenges and is well postured to support the department into the future. We have a remarkably talented and creative base of scientists and engineers in the department, and with our supporting academic and industrial partners, I am impressed daily by their passion, by their dedication to our mission, and to their focus on keeping our nation strong. So thank you again for your attention this morning. I'm truly honored to have an opportunity to chat with you here, and I look forward to continuing our dialogue.
Well, Steve, thank you for those remarks. That was very comprehensive and really interesting. And you raised so many issues that I probably scribbled down 20 questions while you were talking. I'm not going to get to ask them all, unfortunately. But again, really appreciate
Sure.
that really from strategy down to how the S&T enterprise functions. So since time is limited, I'm really going to just focus on one aspect of what you talked about, and then we'll open up to our audience for questions. But it's not gone unnoticed, I think, with many in this room, and no doubt yourself, that the Congress is currently rethinking a lot of what I would call kind of the fundamental assumptions or the fundamental building blocks of how we do or achieve the outcome of getting technological superiority. And so a major focus for them has been the R&E enterprise, and they've brought forward a proposal to shift the focus, have an undersecretary for research and engineering, and I'll welcome the opportunity for you to come on that if you choose, but what I'm really after with my question is to get a sense of what you think the role of that person, whomever it is and whatever their title may be, who is tasked to be the lead for research and engineering for the Department of Defense at a time when, as you laid out,
Yep.
the technology landscape is changing, and there's all this complexity and the need for increased speed. So I'd throw that at you. What do you got for us?
Well, I think that we've got a unique opportunity at the moment with Secretary Carter, Deputy Secretary Work, Undersecretary Kendall, and myself. I mean, I've got great leadership support for things we're doing. Dr. Carter has pointed out to me that only once every 40 years do you get a PhD physicist as Secretary of Defense, and I need to take the most advantage of it I can. We've had actually great engagement with the Hill. I appreciate their support they resonate with the kind of concerns that we have. And I believe that the intent of the discussions about changes in process, changes in organization, are motivated by the right kind of intentions, by trying to address the kind of challenges that we're talking about here, this focus on speed, on flexibility, on increasing the pace of innovation. I think on the eaches, the department has a number of concerns about each of the proposals. But I think that as I look towards the potential change of administration, the coming change of administration, and potential changes in actors, and thinking about how my future successor might be oriented to engage with the kind of challenges they're going to face, the things that are driving the department are largely external. It's the change in the global nature of technology. It's the temperature of technological change. It's the actions of adversaries. These are not kind of choices that are made by personalities or by politics. These are reactions to fundamental events that are going on in the world. And so I think that the need to address these issues is going to be a constant for future administrations. I do think that today we're very well focused on trying to engage technologically, on bringing innovation into the core of our business practice. The amount of time that the Secretary has devoted to this topic is mind-boggling. On any given day, the Secretary Deputy under at random points have me down in their offices explaining nuances of condensed matter physics to them. They're thinking about these kind of topics. They want to touch our industrial base. They want to touch our laboratories. I think they see the value of what we're doing. I think it's going to be increasingly important to make sure that we maintain the kind of resourcing that's going to be essential to maintain that base. And I think it's going to be important to make difficult choices about not just exploring new domains or experimenting at small scales, at the DX scale, at the SCO demonstration scale, but to make those choices about how these things make their way into our portfolio. I think those are decisions that we just haven't come to yet. We're not quite at that point. This shift towards demonstrators is going to enable those decisions in the future. I think that's what the next administration is going to have to manage.
And I want to follow up just a bit on your point about the communities of interest that the department has set up. And there's two questions that came to my mind as you were talking about that, because it really does seem like a place where good ideas and the state of the art can kind of bubble up and knowledge can be shared across the enterprise. But presumably each of those 17 communities of interest believes deep in their heart of hearts that their community is the single most important of the 17. And there's got to be someone whose role it is to say, you know, actually, these are the communities where there's something that we've got to have, you know, in the next 2 years, next 3 years, next 5 years. We're going to shift resources as a result of the work that's happening there. And then secondly, and relatedly, to what extent is industry part of, integrated with, or in some way attached to these communities so that they can feed into that dialogue?
So we've, that's my job, to ensure that we've got the right focus. And I think we're thinking hard about whether we have the right mix at the moment, whether it's time to add an 18th or whether it's time to drop one of the current communities. We've been thinking about things like emerging bioscience, the things that are happening in that domain and the acceleration of that space, and whether that deserves to be its own creative interest. We don't kind of have that critical mass in the department, but we see that critical mass of opportunity, for example. We've been thinking about AI and autonomy and how that's relating to the current computer science work and how we manage those portfolios together. But all the unclassified planning documents that we generate, we distribute to industry. We hold a conference every year where each of the 17 communities is available to brief cleared audiences to make sure that we're aligned with what's happening in industry. It's my expectation, and I do a lot to enforce that those communities are engaged with external researchers, industry, academia, global partners in their areas. And increasingly, we're putting that work onto our roadmaps to make sure that we're aligned with what's happening worldwide. So I do think it's an effective mechanism. We're always tweaking it, trying to make it better. And I think that there will be tweaks coming.
Excellent. Well, let me open up to our audience. We've got a lively group here, and many questions, I'm sure. Start here with Aaron, because he's the farthest forward of the hand raisers.
Thanks. Hi, Aaron Meadow with Defense News. You mentioned biosciences just quickly, and last week Frank Kendall was giving a speech, and he was asked, what are the things that really worry you? He said autonomy and genetic manipulation, among other countries. He didn't really elaborate on that, but he said that's something that he's particularly concerned about and he's seeing starting to pop up. So in the Pentagon's research and in science technology areas, what are you doing with biosciences, with genetic manipulation, and what are the concerns that you're seeing pop up on that?
You know, in the last 18, 24 months, we've seen enormous breakthroughs in gene editing technology. It's been in the popular press, the CRISPR-Cas9 mechanisms, for example, for high-performance gene editing. And I think there's remarkable work being done in those areas, and I'm look forward to the diagnostics and cures that are going to come out of that work. At the same time, we want to make sure that we're thinking about how those technologies can be deployed safely, any kind of controls that might be necessary. And probably what triggered Secretary Kendall's remarks last week was DARPA's announcement of their Safe Gene program, which is a research portfolio that's looking at technologies and techniques to allow us to detect genetic changes. If one encountered a bug, to be able to ask whether that evolved in nature or someone might have tinkered with it. And also to allow us to be able to potentially reverse kind of changes, to be able to provide new tools for medical diagnostic purposes, for medical treatment that might allow us to turn on and turn off some of these capabilities to avoid some of the potential downfalls of the current generation of gene editing technologies. I think it's really exciting work. It's kind of on the frontier of both biology and mathematics and our control of biological systems. There was a press release and some web coverage of it by DARPA last week, and we've announced the upcoming proposal offer to invite industry and universities to bid new ideas to that program. We're increasingly treating biology as a technology, right? Traditionally, biology has been an observational science, and the tools that have been evolving in the world are allowing us to use biology as an engineering tool, perhaps to build new materials, to be able to structure systems in new ways. We're using that for modified algae to generate biofuels, for example, in the commercial sector. Folks are using biological systems for new drug development. We're trying to understand what that means at the basic science level, and is there something that the department needs to be engaged in that space. Anywhere we see that kind of hockey stick of technological evolution, we want to make sure we understand what's going on.
From a near competitor standpoint, are you seeing other countries maybe going at this in a way that Pentagon's not comfortable with?
I don't think I've got those kind of concerns, but I think that we need to make sure that we are open and understand what's happening in that world. I'm actually concerned about our national competitiveness and at the publication rates of folks in different countries. I don't want a bio gap. Right? I think we've got great work, cutting edge work going on here in the United States, and I think we want to make sure we leverage that to the extent possible.
Okay, I want to go to Pat. He was second place.
Pat Towell, CRS. I'm troubled trying to map the situation you face now against the template of the second offset. That was a very well-defined, well-understood, generally agreed upon set of problems, and so you could design pave mover and assault breaker and all these things. It was very, very straightforward. The problem you face now, it is what it is, but the problems are omnium gatherum. And I've got to tell you that any organization that tells me they've got 17 priorities, I've got to wonder whether it really has any priority. I don't have a finely honed question at the end of this rant, but this contrast with how sharply defined the problem set was back in the 70s and 80s, I'm troubled by how that gives us any guidance as to how to proceed.
Well, we take the problem the world gives us, of course, right? And one challenge with the kind of the third offset label is that the second offset is recognized. The quote first and second offsets are recognized in retrospect, right? I remember the end of Warbreaker and some of the things we were doing at the time, and those were Assault Breaker and Warbreaker. Those were not at the time. We never put the labels like second offset on those, right? They were. We were pursuing technologies against problems, and today we're pursuing technologies against problems too. It's really an aspirational comment that looking back on these, we are starting to see the connectivity that we think might help define strategic and tactical relevance of suites of capability in the future.
In the back?
I'd like to follow up on the autonomy question. I do a lot of work with machine learning with large organizations and even larger data sets, and what you find out is optimizing between predictive analytics to help people make decisions versus autonomous systems that can respond with greater agility. That's a fork. And that leads to certain kinds of fragmentation, and these are huge policy issues that are right at the intersection of technical innovation and doctrine. How are you working with the doctrinal side to resolve what appears to be a fundamental break in technological capability?
I'm not entirely convinced that we can't that's a clear break. I think that's there's certainly. I've done core work in machine learning myself back in the day when I was doing real work, and I think there's very interesting places for supervised learning, and putting these tools into places where they are engaging with human operators, aiding human operators, advising. There's lots of ways to think about how humans and machines interoperate in kind of teaming relationships. Broader than that, I think that there's lots of opportunities to learn here in terms of how do we test autonomous systems, how do we ensure their safety, how do we manage the quality of data that we use to train systems in the future. I think all those are great areas for technical exploration, those areas that we're investing in among those 17 priorities. I think that increasingly these are going to be topics of national policy as well, as these kind of capabilities find their way into driverless taxis in Pittsburgh yesterday. I think that's I think it's important, and I want to make sure that our department's engaged on the cutting edge of that work.
All right, I think we have time for a last round, so I want to do my colleague Kath Hicks' trick and recognize people to each ask a single question quickly that Steve can answer in one rush. So I think we have two hands up, so I would ask you each to ask quickly a short question, but defer your answer, and Steve can answer them together.
Hi, Mark Pomerleau with C4ISRNet. In simple terms, how is the department using metrics to measure success for the broad third offset strategy?
And then over here, your question?
Steve, hi, thanks, guys. In theory, leading a couple of months, what would you tell an expert and predecessor to focus on?
All right, Steve, close it.
So metrics tough. One of the tools we have is ability to do wargaming, and we've been increasing our focus on technical analysis to try and put some rigor behind analysis of potential capabilities in a modeled adversarial environment. We really want to kind of get to a much greater level of rigor than hey, this is the latest shiny thing that one wants to look at. And increasingly, we are looking very hard at numbers and trying to make difficult choices among mixes of capabilities. We're not going to talk about those metrics in public, of course, because they advise the kind of details we make. But gaming, simulation, analysis are the key tools that help us make those choices. And for my successor, I think that the most important thing that they could do is ensure that they've got good and strong relationships with the leadership. This is going to be a leadership game to kind of help shape the culture of the department. It's really going to be about cultural change as much as about technological change. And the thing that I have not done, the question you didn't ask, is what haven't I done during my tour? And I have not spent enough time out in the field with our folks. Every day I spend at the Pentagon, I regret that, because so much of the change is happening at the working level. And we need to make sure that we're accelerating that and getting that visible to senior leadership. And so those would be my two pieces of advice.
Well, Steve, thank you for joining us this morning. It's been a great session. And audience, please join me in thanking Welby.
Good.